Iowa, women's studies to me was a discipline that really encompassed a lot of different topics, but they all generally focused on issues of equality, not just for women, but I think for all underrepresented people.
Women's studies is a really unique place to think critically about the lenses through which we perceive the world and to question, why these things are constructed in the way they are, in particular historical or political or national contexts.
I think it was an interdisciplinary study really looking at gender, race, and class, and power intersections, and kind of exploring gender norms and power structures and oppression. When I came to Iowa, I was just focused on English and pre-law. I've always been interested in issues of equality, but I knew I wanted to eventually work for justice and equality. When I went into an Introduction to Women's Studies course, it kind of was like a light bulb moment. All of the things that I had believed were finally explained in the discipline. So at that moment, then I decided to also major in women's studies.
It was in my junior year. I had never taken women's studies classes. I was finishing up my English degree, and I was, very interested in all sorts of things in English, but I hadn't really come across theory. And that semester, I took a course on some sort of theoretical context in English and felt very alienated from that. But at the same time, I took a course with Racheal, and I just took the feminist theory course with her, and it changed my life. It just blew open the world for me in a way that it really changed my life. And, I took following classes with her, and then, she encouraged me to go to graduate school, and now here I am.
During my undergrad, I double majored in women's studies, and then I also went to the business college and have a degree in economics. I guess I arrived at that decision over a couple years, but at the time I really wanted to work in the nonprofit sector, so I kind of wanted the heart of the women's studies degree to explore these issues that I cared a lot about, and power dynamics and oppression and gender norms and roles, and kind of tear those apart and think about them critically. But I also wanted a background in accounting and some of these other areas that I thought would really help me go into the nonprofit field. And I think it has provided a lot of balance. The classes that best shaped my work in women's studies were politics of the body and women and food. When I started taking those classes at the same time, I kind of became transfixed by the research being done about the control over human bodies and the issues of food and feminism. And I think Iowa is such a cool place to learn about that because it's an important center for food production. So the issues around farming and corn production and globalization of food, it was just really astounding for me. And so it was a cool place to be able to research those issues. Most of my understanding of what women's studies is came from the discussions that we had. And I think it's so important to have courses like that, not just for people in women's studies, but at the entire university.
There was a small group of women and men who took those classes with me, and I think because university is just such a large institution, the moments of intimacy with classmates are so rare. So many of the things that we read, all of us struggled with, like reading Foucault for the first time, reading Bell Hooks, but really being able to unpack those in a classroom like Marjorie's, which felt safe, and yet there were a lot of intellectual risks being taken. That was very useful, and it definitely had to do with the readings. My classmates and I really felt like those texts opened up a way of looking at the world.
When I was a freshman, I actually did not start out at Iowa. I transferred there after a semester. So I was at St. Louis University, which is a Jesuit university, and I was in a gender women's studies course, and the professor somehow alluded to the fact that the university president was a priest, and that was a man, and it would always be a man. And maybe I was naive at the time because I hadn't really put everything together, but I couldn't believe I was in this powerful institution meant to shape and mold future leaders, and a woman could never lead it. And so after that, I ended up transferring to Iowa and really loved the classes and the people. I guess to me it was a really safe space where you could explore a lot of things that were going on in the world that nobody was going to be talking about, and really small, intimate classes and professors that really cared a lot. And you could also kind of apply some of those concepts in other ways. Like my thesis, I thought that was a really neat way to tie together my interests. My senior thesis was on the Product Red campaign from the Gap, the retail store, and this was back in, I guess, 07, 08, and they'd come out with this campaign to buy these red T-shirts and all this red merchandise, and I think a portion of that would go towards fighting HIV/AIDS in Africa. And so I was really tearing apart in my thesis, what does it mean to commodify this idea of social equity and use capitalistic tools like consumption to help people across the world? Why can't we just fund them in different ways? What does it mean to use this? And is this a shift in society that now we're going to solve all of these problems by people in America buying t-shirts?
I just got my master's, for example, in education, and I'm currently teaching in Las Vegas. I was placed 3 years ago in Las Vegas to Teach for America, and I went into Teach for America wanting to kind of put into practice all the theory I had learned in women's studies. So I was looking for a way to be more active and move beyond just the theory into action. And so teaching kind of opened up an entirely new space in my views about women's studies that I hadn't considered before. Not only I'm teaching in a high poverty area, but also I teach special ed. So it became an opportunity to expand my ideas about what feminism can be.
I am a PhD candidate at the University of Michigan, and I am in a joint program, one of the few in the country, for English and Women's Studies. And I don't think I can stress enough how critical my English and Women's Studies joint degree from the University of Iowa was, and I actually this year served on the admissions committee here, and I can just say that having a joint degree already really puts students in an excellent position to be able to succeed at an institution like this.
After graduating from the University of Iowa, I went on to graduate school and received my Master's of Urban Planning. I currently work in affordable housing for the state of Texas, serving low-income Texans statewide, primarily in rural parts of the state. My background in women's studies definitely led me to go into urban planning to help address inequalities and the allocation of resources, so kind of using I'd say the heart and the critical thinking skills of women's studies combined with my interest in economics to look at urban planning and how we can help make cities more sustainable and efficient and better for low-income families and provide affordable housing. So I think the women's studies and gender framework absolutely contributes to my work. Who gets affordable housing, why, how, and where, what makes for a high opportunity area, so places that have access to good schools, clean water, safe neighborhoods, what homes are in the floodplain, and then where there are environmental hazards and pollutants that really hurt families. In my current job, I make maps and present data and look at policy changes and help decision makers see the impact on all Texans, especially low-income Texans where I work.